In my early teens, I often hung out with a steady group of friends, Randy, Isaac, and Jordan, continuously searching for new outdoor adventures. Oftentimes, we would venture into the woods on the town's edge. It was September, and me and the guys were just a few weeks into the fall semester of the 8th grade. We realized our outdoor time was limited, so we decided to attempt building a fort in the woods that we could use even during the winter. We all had walkie-talkies that we could use to communicate with each other. At the time, kids didn't have cell phones, so they were pretty cool, and my best friend Randy lived close enough to where we could communicate while we were at home. They were particularly useful that day as we often went our separate ways to gather large branches for our fort. As I was out gathering, admiring the sun rays filtering through the trees and enjoying the perfect slightly breezy weather, I was suddenly startled by a loud thud ahead of me, resembling the sound of an axe hitting a tree, but none of us had axes. Looking up, I only saw the leaves continuing to sway gently in the wind, but I kept watching closely, thinking I might have seen some movement. Perhaps it was just a deer. Then my focus was broken when Isaac started chatting through the walkie-talkie. As I made my way back to the fort, I heard a distant shout echoing. I assumed it was just the other guys fooling around. When I arrived at the fort, I found Isaac and Jordan setting up the first branches. I asked if they had seen Randy, and they said they last saw him when we split up. I repeatedly called out for Randy on the walkie-talkie, hoping he was just playing around and trying to scare us. Randy would definitely do something like that. After numerous attempts, I started to get a bit annoyed, becoming even more convinced that he was just messing with us. Then, it sounded as if someone held down their outgoing button. As the sound of slight static started to reverberate, I continued to call out. We put our speakers close to our ears to listen, while staring at each other, puzzled, as we were all certain we heard some kind of heavy breathing. Isaac then called out, saying to stop effing around and help us as him and Jordan got back to work. As the sun rapidly descended, signaling earlier darkness this time of year, Randy's continued absence really started to worry us, and we finally thought something might have happened. Before it got completely dark, we decided to keep our walkies on and close while splitting up to search for him. We continued to call out over the walkie-talkie as we went our separate ways. The creepy atmosphere grew as darkness rapidly covered the forest, quickly making it hard to continue searching without a flashlight. After several minutes of searching the silent, dark woods, Isaac suggested over the speaker that we should check out Randy's house to see if he had gone home. We then gathered at the makeshift fort and made our way back into town. When we arrived at Randy's house and rang the doorbell, his parents answered with confused looks that quickly turned to concern as we explained the situation. They immediately called the police to report it. Isaac, Jordan, and I were all questioned, and we provided as much information as we could. It was now completely dark, and I felt guilty for not mentioning his disappearance earlier. We were all on edge, and our families became extra protective, stating they didn't want us going out for a while. That same night, while I was in bed, laying there confused and shocked still about Randy, I kept my walkie-talkie close, trying to call out for him every so often, just hoping maybe he can hear me. After several attempts and long periods of waiting between, I eventually drifted off. Then, just later, I was woken up abruptly by noise on the walkie-talkie. My heart racing, I quickly pressed the send button and called out, hoping it was Randy. Instead, a strange man's voice replied, "Randy is gone," sending chills down my spine. I rushed to my bedroom window to look outside, thinking the speaker might be close. While continuing to call out, I saw a shadowy figure standing near a tree, staring up at my window. Before I could react, the figure moved into the shadows and disappeared. Terrified, I quickly rushed to my parents' room, woke them up, and told them what had happened. They immediately notified the police to give the update. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and months into years. Randy was never heard from again. Even though more than 20 years have passed, I still remember that day like it was yesterday. I think about Randy often. Anytime I hear a story or news about missing persons, he is the first person that comes to my mind. If by some stroke of luck you hear the story, Randy, know that your family and friends love you and still long for your return.